Welcome to XRP Pro Ledger, and today we are going deep on one of the most important and most misunderstood price frameworks in the entire XRP community, the Shane Ellis theory. Because with XRP, exchange volume climbing to $28 million on major exchanges, supply shock signals appearing across multiple platforms, and every Wall Street institution confirmed to be moving into crypto within the next 12 months, the conditions that this theory requires to play out are assembling in real time right now. And before we get into the numbers, I need to address something directly. The constant date setting that keeps happening in this community is a trap that costs people real money and real conviction. May is the new April. There was a day in March, there was a week in February, those dates came and went. The breakout is coming, but it is coming when the market least expects it, without a warning, and it is going to sideline every single person who was waiting for a specific confirmation before they positioned. The people who are going to benefit most are already holding. Let us get into why what you are holding is more valuable than most people currently understand. Let us address the psychology question that keeps coming up because it reveals exactly how wealth transfers happen in markets like this one. Why are so many people scared to buy XRP right now but feel completely comfortable buying near the top? The answer is not complicated. It is basic human psychology operating exactly as it always does in financial markets. Near the top, the social proof is everywhere. Green candles are on every screen, friends are texting about crypto, news channels are covering it, social media is flooded with excitement. That social excitement creates an emotional safety signal that tells the retail brain it is safe to buy because everyone else is buying. Right now, none of that excitement exists. The price is grinding sideways, the headlines are quiet, and that quiet feels like danger to someone who has been conditioned to use social proof as their buy signal. But here is what experienced investors understand, that retail investors learn too late. The quiet is not danger, the quiet is the discount. Millionaires are not made at the top when everyone is excited. They are made exactly in this kind of environment. When the price is steady, the sentiment is flat, and the people who understand the fundamentals are the only ones paying attention. The Shane Ellis theory deserves a complete and honest breakdown because it is either being dismissed by people who have not read it carefully or being misrepresented by people who are attaching their own number to it without explaining the mechanism. The core thesis is this: the price of XRP is not ultimately determined by its circulating supply in the way that traditional crypto market cap analysis calculates. It is determined by the amount of liquidity required for institutional transactions to flow through XRP efficiently at the volumes the institutions need to move. When large financial institutions use XRP for high-value cross-border settlements, the price needs to be high enough to provide the liquidity bridge those transactions require without creating destabilizing volatility on the way through. The banking sector and the IMF have both stated publicly that they want stability and trust in any settlement system they adopt. And Ellis's theory holds that at a certain point, the institutional participants who need XRP to function as their settlement asset will establish a set price that reflects those liquidity requirements rather than retail speculation. That mechanism is what makes the Ellis framework so different from conventional crypto price targets, and it is why the numbers it produces look so different from anything the retail market is used to seeing. The numbers attached to the Shane Ellis framework are the ones that most people either dismiss as fantasy or embrace without understanding the mathematics behind them, and neither response serves you as well as actually engaging with the logic. The original theory placed XRP at $500 or more based on cross-border payment volumes and liquidity requirements as they existed when the framework was developed. But here is the critical update that changes those numbers dramatically for the current environment. When Ellis developed this framework, tokenization was not part of the conversation. XRP being used for domestic payments was not on the table. Micropayments infrastructure was not being built. AI to AI machine value transfer was not even a concept in the space. Today, XRP is being positioned simultaneously for cross-border institutional settlement, domestic instant payments, micropayments infrastructure, and machine-to-machine value transfer between AI systems. Each of those additional use cases adds another layer of liquidity demand on top of the original cross-border payment thesis. The $500 from the original Ellis framework, updated for everything we know today about XRP's expanded deployment landscape, points toward $2,000 to $2. 500 as the more realistic institutional liquidity price point before any repricing events are factored in. The repricing event concept is where the Shane Ellis framework connects to the practical mechanics of how large-scale financial infrastructure transitions play out in real markets, and it is important to understand this as a mechanism rather than just a number. The thesis is that XRP will not gradually drift from current prices to 4 or 5-digit valuations through the slow accumulation of retail buying pressure. Instead, it will be repriced, meaning the institutions that need XRP at a specific price level to function efficiently as their settlement asset will establish it at that level through the market mechanics available to institutional scale capital deployment. Jimmy Valley's framework, which derives from the Ellis theory, puts the eventual set price between $10,000 and $37,500. The near-term conservative estimates suggest an initial repricing to somewhere between $589 and $2,000, with $1,000 being the most commonly cited initial target, followed by subsequent repricing events as tokenization scales, more use cases come online, and the institutional liquidity requirements grow proportionally. Whether the specific numbers are exactly right is less important than understanding that the mechanism driving the price is institutional liquidity demand, not retail sentiment, and that distinction changes everything about how you should be thinking about current prices. The Wall Street institutional confirmation that Hunter Horsley provided that every Wall Street institution will be doing something in crypto within the next 12 months is the macro validation that the Shane Ellis theory requires to play out at the scale the framework and envisions. Tokenization is already happening every day. It is not yet happening at the scale where it is visibly moving XRP's price, but the infrastructure being assembled, BlackRock's tokenization rails, the DTCC's production deployment timeline, Ripple's full financial stack, including Prime, Treasury, and custody, is being built right now in the background, while the retail market watches a sideways chart and waits for a date. When tokenization hits the scale where trillions start hitting these networks, the liquidity demand that the Ellis framework describes becomes real-world market pressure rather than theoretical modeling. And XRP, built for tokenization from day one when nobody else was talking about it, is positioned at the center of that demand with the institutional relationships, the regulatory clarity, and the technical infrastructure already in place to handle it at scale. The XRP exchange volume climbing to $28 million daily is the on-chain commercial signal that deserves more attention than a single data point headline typically receives. Exchange volume is a real-time measurement of how much actual transactional activity is flowing through XRP on a daily basis, and $28 million in daily exchange volume during a period of flat retail price action means the volume is being driven by something other than retail speculation. In the current environment, with institutional ETF inflows running consistently, with domestic settlement integrations documented as live, and with cross-border payment corridors actively processing transactions through Ripple's network, the floor of daily XRP volume is being set by operational utility demand rather than trading activity alone. When the retail FOMO wave arrives on top of that operational utility floor, when price starts moving and the social proof mechanism triggers the mass retail entry event, the volume numbers are going to look completely different from anything this market has seen in previous cycles. The perfect storm that is building has three engines: institutional demand, retail FOMO, and ETF FOMO, all arriving simultaneously into a supply-constrained market. The Tether situation requires a direct and honest assessment because it represents both a systemic risk and a structural opportunity for the XRP ecosystem specifically. The news that Pornhub replaced USDT with USDC for all creator payouts is a small but symbolically precise data point, a major real-world payment platform making an explicit compliance-driven decision to abandon Tether in favor of a regulated stablecoin alternative. This is the early visible signal of a trend that is going to accelerate significantly as more jurisdictions implement digital asset regulatory frameworks. The US government's support for Tether will last exactly as long as Tether serves a strategic purpose in the historical pattern of how the US government has treated other financial actors who outlive their strategic usefulness, not encouraging for Tether's long-term survival. The FTX example is instructive. Sam Bankman-Fried was funneling money to both parties, and the government still allowed it to collapse when it became necessary. When Tether no longer serves a purpose, the same outcome becomes possible. For XRP holders, RLUSD is the regulated stablecoin alternative native to the XRP ledger, and every institution migrating away from Tether is a potential RLUSD adopter, bringing liquidity and utility directly into the XRP ecosystem. The supply shock thesis adds the tokenomics dimension that creates compounding pressure on XRP's price from both the demand side and the supply side simultaneously, and the timing of both pressures arriving together is what makes the current window so significant for holders. Kraken's supply shock signal, which the community immediately and correctly connected to XRP, is the on-chain confirmation that exchange-held XRP supply is declining, meaning the tokens most immediately available for selling are being moved to long-term storage by holders who are not planning to liquidate at current prices. When institutional demand arrives through ETF inflows, domestic settlement transactions, tokenization volume, and cross-border payment flows, and that demand arrives into a market where exchange-available supply has been compressed by this accumulation, the price discovery math is elementary. Rising demand meeting declining available supply produces price appreciation that is faster and more violent than either factor alone could generate. The supply shock and the institutional demand wave are on a collision course, and $1.43 is still on the accumulation side of that collision. The flare conversation is the one I want to handle with complete honesty because it is both genuinely important for XRP holders and emotionally charged in ways that prevent clear analysis. Flare, sitting under a penny right now, represents one of the most asymmetric risk-reward profiles in the entire crypto space for someone who already holds XRP and understands the ecosystem. The comparison to XRP's position in 2017 before the run to $3.84 is not hype, it is a framework for understanding where Flare sits in its own adoption cycle, early enough that the majority of retail investors have not engaged with it seriously, technically developed enough that the infrastructure for a significant move is being assembled. Most people who still dismiss Flare are doing so because of the 2020 airdrop delay, which is an emotional response to a historical operational problem rather than a current analysis of the project's fundamentals and its role in the XRP ecosystem. Flare's smart contract and interoperability layer is the connective infrastructure that XRP's institutional payment rail needs as its use cases expand into DeFi tokenization and cross-chain value transfer. Holding both is not diversification away from XRP, it is building depth in the same fundamental thesis. The complete picture today is one that requires you to zoom entirely out from the daily price chart and look at the ecosystem being assembled around XRP from every institutional direction simultaneously. The Shane Ellis theory's institutional liquidity pricing mechanism, the supply shock compressing exchange available supply, Hunter Horsley confirming every Wall Street institution moves in the next 12 months, Tether's strategic vulnerability creating a pathway to RLUSD adoption, the $31 trillion tokenization market that the XRP ledger was purpose-built to serve from day one, Flare providing the smart contract layer the ecosystem needs at a price that reflects none of its long-term potential, in a retail market that is still scared to buy at $1.43 but will feel completely comfortable buying at all-time highs when the social proof arrives. The breakout does not need a date. It does not need a specific calendar event. It needs the institutional liquidity requirements of the settlement system being built right now to demand a repriced XRP, and everything we have covered today confirms that demand is being assembled from every direction at once. Your bloodline breaks the cycle the moment you refuse to sell. We are holding the future. Stay patient, stay positioned, and let the infrastructure do the work. If this analysis changed how you're thinking about XRP, hit like and subscribe. I drop deep dive breakdowns like this twice a day to keep you ahead of the market.